Benjamin Netanyahu has been one of the most powerful and controversial leaders in Israel's history. But what if the true story behind his rise is darker than anyone imagines? Many know about his political success, but few understand the hidden forces that shaped his journey. In this video, we'll uncover the shocking secrets that could change everything you thought you knew about Netanyahu. Stick around, because this story goes deeper than you think. Benjamin Netanyahu wasn't born into a world of ease, yet from the very start, there was something extraordinary about his journey. Born in Tel Aviv in 1949, during the fledgling years of Israel's existence, Netanyahu's family was deeply intertwined with the nation's history. His father, Ben-Zion Netanyahu, was a well-respected historian, a man who understood the value of power in shaping history. But what many don't know is that his mother, Zila, was the silent force who nurtured his character, instilling in him a fierce determination that would later define his political career. From a young age, Netanyahu displayed an unusual blend of intelligence and ambition. He wasn't just any child. He was raised in an environment where intellectual pursuits and the pursuit of power went hand in hand. His father often spoke of the importance of history and understanding the past in order to shape the future. But what if these lessons weren't only about understanding history, but controlling it? Could these early lessons have planted the seed of a future politician who would dominate Israel's political stage for decades? At just 14, Netanyahu left Israel to study in the United States. He attended Cheltenham High School in Pennsylvania, a place that many thought would humble him. But it did something far more significant. There, surrounded by new influences, Netanyahu began to sharpen his mind, watching how the world worked from the outside. But was it really just education that shaped him? Or was there a deeper need to understand the game of power? His time in the US wasn't simply about academics. In fact, it was during these years that Netanyahu's political ambition began to take shape. It wasn't just the classroom lessons that he absorbed, but also the way the political machine in America moved. He began to learn that success wasn't only about being smart. It was about leveraging the right connections, knowing when to strike, and understanding the delicate balance between public perception and private ambition. Yet, his journey wasn't without struggle. Netanyahu returned to Israel in 1967. Just as the country was reeling from the aftermath of the Six-Day War. He joined the military, a decision that would set him apart from many others in the political landscape. His service in the elite Sayeret Matkal, an Israeli Special Forces unit, was grueling. It was here, in the heat of battle, that Netanyahu's resilience was tested. He rose through the ranks, proving himself as a man capable of handling pressure, both on the battlefield and in the political arenas that would later define his career. However, what many don't realize is that Netanyahu's military success was more than just about courage. It was about a deeper, almost calculated drive. Was his time in the military preparing him for more than just the front lines? Could it be that Netanyahu saw the battlefield as a metaphor for the political world he would soon enter? These were the early signs that perhaps Netanyahu wasn't just a man of the people. He was a man shaping his own destiny, methodically and strategically. After his military service, Netanyahu's entry into politics was almost inevitable. His return to the US to study at MIT and Harvard wasn't just about furthering his education. It was part of a larger plan to craft his identity as a leader. While his peers struggled to find their own path, Netanyahu was already laying the foundation for what would become a remarkable career. When he finally entered the Israeli political scene in the late 1980s, he wasn't like other politicians. He was a man on a mission, armed with knowledge, experience, and an uncanny ability to read the room. But it wasn't just his education, military background, and ambition that set him apart. It was his ability to make connections, to build relationships that served his long-term goals. Netanyahu's early political career was marked by his strategic use of media and public relations. He understood the power of perception and how to shape it to his advantage. His speeches were crafted with precision, designed to resonate with the public while subtly cementing his image as the leader Israel needed. Yet, even as Netanyahu soared, there were whispers. Behind the polished speeches and calculated moves, there was a growing sense that Netanyahu was playing a much larger game, a game that went beyond politics and into the realm of personal power. Was it all just a result of ambition, or was there something more at play? Even in these early years, there were signs of a man who was not only focused on winning elections, but on controlling the very forces that could propel him to the top. As Netanyahu rose through the ranks of the Likud party, he became known for his sharp wit and ability to outmaneuver his political rivals. But was this mere political acumen? Or was there a deeper, darker strategy at play? Could it be that Netanyahu was already building the framework for a political empire that would, over time, shake the very foundations of Israeli politics? The early life of Benjamin Netanyahu is a tale of ambition, intellect, and power. But what lies beneath the surface? What secrets were hidden in the man who would go on to dominate Israeli politics for decades? As we delve deeper into Netanyahu's rise, we begin to see that his story is not just one of success, but of a calculated path to power, one that would set the stage for Israel's future in ways few could have predicted. Netanyahu's rise to power didn't happen by chance. It was a carefully calculated journey, a relentless pursuit of control that started long before he became Israel's leader. But how did a man who wasn't even well known in the political circles rise so swiftly? Was it his intelligence, his charm, or was there something deeper, a hidden force pushing him forward? It all began in the mid-1980s when Netanyahu took on a pivotal role as Israel's ambassador to the United Nations. While many viewed it as just a diplomatic post, Netanyahu understood its true potential. It was more than just representing Israel. It was the perfect stage to build his image. In those years, Israel faced global criticism, and Netanyahu found himself standing as the nation's sharpest defender. His speeches were fiery, confident, and persuasive, and they caught the world's attention. But there was more to his eloquence than just patriotism. There was a calculated understanding of how to sway hearts and minds. It wasn't just about defending Israel. Netanyahu used this platform to elevate his personal brand, carefully crafting an image of strength and unshakable resolve. Every word, every appearance was a calculated step toward his future. And Israel took notice. His sharp mind and ruthless precision made him stand out. But was this just political skill, or was there something darker beneath the surface? As he returned to Israel in the early 1990s, Netanyahu was no longer the outsider. He was a force to be reckoned with. He joined the Likud party, where his vision of a powerful, secure Israel quickly aligned with the party's message. But it wasn't just his message that made him rise. It was his ability to make the right connections at the right time. Netanyahu didn't just talk about security and power. He knew how to make alliances that ensured his success. One of the most significant alliances that helped him was with the military. Netanyahu's ability to connect with high-ranking officials in the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, gave him a level of credibility that few others could match. But these alliances weren't always based on mutual trust. They were strategic, designed to secure Netanyahu's future while positioning him as the one who could truly lead Israel. And then there was the media. Netanyahu understood better than most that power wasn't just about winning elections. It was about controlling the narrative. The media became his stage, and he played it masterfully. His every move was covered, every speech dissected, and every policy framed in a way that highlighted his vision. But behind the scenes, the question remained. Was Netanyahu's rise truly based on his merits, or were there darker forces at play? In the mid-1990s, Netanyahu's moment came. After the assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, the political landscape in Israel was shattered. The nation was in turmoil, and Netanyahu saw an opportunity. His rivals were vulnerable, and he seized the moment. He became the face of the Likud party, and ran a campaign that struck at the heart of the nation's fears. His message was clear. Israel needed a strong leader to protect it, and he was the only one capable of doing so. But as he rose, there were whispers. The alliances he had built, the media manipulation, the calculated political moves, they weren't just about leadership. They were about control. Netanyahu had mastered the art of playing the long game, and he wasn't going to let anything stand in his way. His rise to power wasn't the result of mere ambition. It was the result of a deep, almost instinctual understanding of the game of politics. Every move, every alliance, every speech was part of a bigger strategy. But what price would Israel pay for this kind of ambition? As Netanyahu took his place at the top, many wondered if his rise was truly about Israel's future, or about securing his own power at all costs. Netanyahu's rise to power wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. Once he secured the prime minister's office, it became clear that Netanyahu's leadership would be defined by one thing above all: control. But control over what? Was it Israel's future, or was it something far more personal? The way Netanyahu navigated his time in power leaves us questioning. How far would he go to maintain that control? When Netanyahu first assumed office in 1996, he didn't just inherit a nation, he inherited a complex web of political challenges, external threats, and internal divisions. The expectations were high. Israel was at a crossroads, facing fierce international pressures, and Netanyahu was determined to carve out a path that would secure the country's place on the world stage. But as much as Netanyahu portrayed himself as a leader for the people, there were darker undercurrents to his rule, unseen forces guiding his every move. One of the first major decisions that defined Netanyahu's leadership was his approach to security. The security of Israel has always been at the heart of its politics, and Netanyahu knew how to exploit this concern. He embraced a tough stance on Palestinian negotiations, maintaining a rigid approach that many saw as uncompromising. His stance on security shaped Israel's foreign policy for years to come. But was this truly about the safety of the nation? Or was it about Netanyahu consolidating his own power, portraying himself as the only man capable of leading Israel through turbulent times? In the early years of his first term, Netanyahu was faced with one of the most difficult political choices: how to handle the Oslo Accords. The peace process, signed in the 1990s, was fragile at best, and Netanyahu's opposition to it was well known. Yet, despite his resistance, the pressure to uphold these agreements grew. Netanyahu's handling of the peace process became a defining moment in his leadership, one that divided the nation. While his critics accused him of sabotaging peace efforts, Netanyahu framed his opposition as a necessary step to ensure Israel's security. But as his grip on power tightened, the question remained: was he more focused on maintaining his position than finding a true path to peace? His policies on security weren't the only things that kept him in control. Netanyahu's masterstroke was in his manipulation of public opinion. From the very beginning, Netanyahu understood the power of media. He used it like a weapon, controlling the narrative to strengthen his image as the strongman who would protect Israel from external and internal threats. His speeches were carefully constructed, blending patriotic rhetoric with a sense of urgency that resonated deeply with Israelis. But beneath the polished speeches lay a leader who knew exactly how to stir emotions and rally support. Was this skillful leadership, or was it political manipulation? The line between the two seemed to blur as Netanyahu continued to shape his public persona. But what about his actions behind closed doors? As Netanyahu's leadership deepened, his controversial political maneuvers became harder to ignore. He made deals with the ultra-Orthodox parties, strengthening his coalition, but at the cost of alienating other segments of Israeli society. His political alliances, while necessary for maintaining power, also raised questions about his true motivations. Was Netanyahu making these alliances for the good of the country, or was he simply securing his own hold on power? The media often portrayed him as a pragmatic leader, But there were those who saw a man willing to make any deal, no matter the long-term consequences. Israel prospered under Netanyahu's leadership, with economic growth and a relatively strong military. But this prosperity came at a cost. Beneath the surface of success, deeper scars began to emerge. Netanyahu's political maneuvering, while effective, left a trail of division within Israel. His approach to leadership wasn't just about making tough decisions, it was about making decisions that would ensure his dominance. While the nation might have benefited from his policies in some ways, Netanyahu's pursuit of control led to an increasing erosion of trust in the political system. His opponents began to accuse him of undermining democratic processes, while his supporters turned a blind eye to the cracks in his leadership. Yet, it was precisely this tight grip on power that allowed Netanyahu to survive scandal after scandal, accusation after accusation. Time and again, he emerged unscathed, seemingly immune to the usual political fallout. Was Netanyahu simply a master of his craft? Or was there something more behind his enduring reign? The real question remains. Did Netanyahu's power lie in his leadership abilities, or in his uncanny ability to shape Israel's future in a way that kept him in control at all costs? As he navigated his political career, one thing became clear. Netanyahu wasn't just leading Israel. He was shaping it to reflect his vision of the world, one where power was never far from his reach. For all his calculated political victories, Netanyahu's time in power was far from clean. Beneath the surface of his strong leadership, a shadowy world of corruption and scandal loomed, casting a dark cloud over his legacy. But as Israel prospered under his rule, how many were truly aware of the controversial dealings happening behind closed doors? Were these just isolated incidents, or was there a deeper, more insidious pattern of behavior that no one dared to speak of? Netanyahu's public persona was that of a man in control, a leader who knew how to navigate the complex political world. But the more power he gained, the more the whispers of corruption and abuse of power grew louder. The public's faith in his leadership began to crack, but many chose to ignore the mounting allegations, believing in his ability to always emerge unscathed. One of the most notorious scandals that has followed Netanyahu throughout his career involves Case 1000, where he was accused of accepting lavish gifts from wealthy businessmen, including expensive cigars, champagne, and jewelry. This wasn't just a minor slip-up. It was a betrayal of trust. These gifts, some claimed, were not mere tokens of friendship, but bribes meant to secure political favors. Netanyahu denied any wrongdoing, arguing that these were personal gifts, but the damage to his reputation was done. How many times had such personal gifts been exchanged in Israel's political circles? And how many times had such gifts truly been a price paid for power? But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Netanyahu's involvement in Case 2000, the alleged negotiations with Yedioth Ahronot's publisher, Arnon Moses, in exchange for favorable media coverage, raised even more eyebrows. If Netanyahu had truly exchanged favors for media support, what did this say about his control over the narrative? Was the Israel we saw on our screens an honest portrayal of reality? Or was it all carefully crafted to serve Netanyahu's interests? His critics called it media manipulation, but Netanyahu's supporters claimed it was nothing more than a misunderstanding. Yet the fact remained. This deal was more than just a political maneuver. It was a dangerous game that tested the boundaries of ethics and power. The scandals didn't end there. As Netanyahu's career advanced, other rumors began to circulate, each one more shocking than the last. Accusations of money laundering, bribery, and abuse of power followed him like a shadow. But were these merely the price of a politician's success, or were they symptomatic of a far more corrupt system? Was Netanyahu the puppet master, pulling the strings behind a political game that few understood, or was he simply a player caught in a web of his own making? But is this really the full story? What lies beneath the surface of these scandals? Were Netanyahu's actions part of a broader strategy to secure not just political power, but personal gain? And how many in Israel truly knew about the secrets that had been buried in the depths of his career? As more of these allegations surfaced, many Israelis found themselves asking, in the end, Netanyahu's legacy as a political leader is inextricably linked to these dark secrets. For every triumph he achieved, there was always a shadow following him, threatening to undo everything. And as Israel faces new challenges in the years to come, the question remains, can Netanyahu truly be remembered as a hero? Or will the weight of his scandals forever taint his reputation? For all his strength, Netanyahu's empire began to show cracks. It wasn't the external forces that caused the downfall of Israel's longest-serving prime minister, but the internal fractures that threatened to undo everything. The same sharp mind that had once won him admiration now struggled to navigate the shifting tides of Israeli politics. The very system he had so carefully built seemed to be crumbling under the weight of scandal, public outrage, and relentless legal battles. It all began with a sense of urgency that Netanyahu couldn't ignore. The public that had once celebrated his leadership was now divided. Protests erupted on the streets, a growing chorus of voices questioning his integrity and leadership. The once loyal base that had seen him as the protector of Israel's future began to fracture. Even the most ardent supporters couldn't escape the mounting evidence that Netanyahu was no longer the man they thought they knew. What had once been a movement of unity now seemed like a house built on sand, ready to collapse at any moment. But it wasn't just the protesters that marked the beginning of Netanyahu's decline. It was his own government. His political rivals, once quiet, began to rise against him. They saw an opening, a crack in his armor, and they pounced. Within the Likud party, whispers turned to open rebellion. Internal battles that Netanyahu had expertly managed for years began to surface, and his leadership became increasingly fragile. Was it possible that the same allies who had helped him rise to power were now plotting his fall? As cracks appeared in his coalition, Netanyahu was forced to fight on multiple fronts, struggling to hold on to control. And then came the legal battles. The very scandals that had followed Netanyahu like a shadow throughout his career now came to a head. The investigations into corruption, bribery, and abuse of power became a daily headline. The courtroom drama intensified, and with it, Netanyahu's once unbreakable image began to shatter. The man who had once been untouchable now found himself cornered, defending himself against charges that many believed would eventually destroy him. But as the legal challenges mounted, a question lingered in the air. Was this the beginning of the end for Netanyahu? Or had he managed to survive even the darkest of storms before? Even the media, which Netanyahu had once wielded like a weapon, began to turn against him. The carefully crafted narrative that had made him a hero in the eyes of many Israelis was starting to unravel. The same media outlets that had once praised him now questioned his actions, calling into doubt his fitness to lead. Netanyahu, who had long controlled the story, found himself struggling to maintain the upper hand. The manipulation of public opinion, once his greatest strength, seemed to be slipping away. It was clear now that Netanyahu's fall wasn't caused by an external force, but from within. The alliances he had built, the trust he had cultivated, all began to erode. His grip on power, once so firm, now seemed tenuous. And the most shocking revelation of all was that Netanyahu's greatest adversary wasn't some foreign enemy. It was the very political system he had once mastered. As Israel faced uncertain times, it became clear that the end of Netanyahu's reign wasn't a result of his enemies. It was the inevitable consequence of his own choices. Benjamin Netanyahu's rise and fall have forever altered Israel's political landscape. But as we look back on his career, one undeniable truth emerges. His story is far from over. Despite the scandals, the controversies, and the legal battles, Netanyahu's name remains etched in the nation's history. His legacy is as complex as his time in power, marked by both triumphs and failures, successes, and betrayals. Netanyahu's impact on Israel cannot be denied. Under his leadership, the country saw significant economic growth and an unparalleled military strength. He was a man who understood the pulse of the nation, and his every decision seemed to be made with the goal of securing Israel's future. Yet, as the years passed, his once immovable position began to weaken. The same political strategies that brought him to power slowly became the reasons for his decline. And now, with his political career hanging in the balance, one question lingers. What does the future hold for Israel? As the nation grapples with the aftermath of Netanyahu's reign, Israel's political future is uncertain. Will the next leader follow in his footsteps, embracing the same tactics of power and control? Or will a new era begin, one that rejects the old ways and seeks to heal the wounds that Netanyahu's leadership may have caused? The future of Israeli politics is at a crossroads, and it's unclear which direction it will take. But perhaps the most important question remains. Was Netanyahu's power truly his own? Or was it shaped by forces beyond his control? For all the strategic alliances, media manipulation, and calculated decisions, there is a deeper question that remains unanswered. Did Netanyahu's reign reflect his brilliance as a leader? Or was it the result of circumstances that played out beyond his reach? Was his empire of power built solely on his will? Or was it the inevitable result of a political system that allowed him to thrive? As Israel looks ahead, one thing is certain. Netanyahu's legacy will continue to shape the political discourse for years to come. The questions surrounding his rise, his leadership, and his fall will persist, haunting both his supporters and his critics alike. And while we may never fully understand the depths of his power, we are left to wonder, can Israel truly move forward? Or are the shadows of Netanyahu's empire still looming over the nation? As we close, we encourage you to think deeply about these questions. What do you believe is the true legacy of Benjamin Netanyahu? Do you think Israel's future lies in the path he carved? Or is it time for a new direction? If you found this video engaging, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more thought-provoking content, and watch the full video to dive deeper into the story of Netanyahu and Israel's future. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Stay tuned as we continue to explore the stories that shape the world.